So, hey guys, I've been thinking more about just in general how to beat Tearlament. So, obviously, one of the biggest things is just Dimension Shifter, and then new to the lineup, I guess, would be Contact C. Contact C is decent into like pretty much everything aside from Fluanderies. Contact C will be able to stop the tier names in the graveyard from activating, whether on your turn or their turn, because Contact C doesn't specify turn. So whenever your opponent either normal summons or special summons, then you can special summon Contact C. The only exact situation where Contact C will slightly suck, of course, is when it can be linked off. And the only target for your opponent to link off Contact C for is basically just Sprite Elf and as well as Dahark the Dark Charmer. So the most obnoxious timing, I guess, to use Contact C would be on the special summon of Kit Kalos. That would be a pretty annoying time, or right before, I guess. Because, no wait, it doesn't lock your opponent out of special summoning, it locks them out of, like, summoning from the extra deck, essentially, unless they use Contact C, which they should have no targets for Contact C. Like, there's just no monsters. And this also beats Exosister as well, because they need to use 4s, which they won't have 4s, they'll be stuck with Contact C. And they can't link off because Martha locks you. Like, Martha's honestly just garbage. So, this works under Dimension Shifter as well. And, of course, this can't be called by, and I hope your opponent can't cross this out. Like, this should have pretty much no counterplay. Well, yeah. And then, of course, there is also Evenly Matched, which just banishes face down, which is one of the best kinds of removal in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So, the only issue with this is that, honestly, tier is kind of bullshit. That there's no other way to put it. So, the thing about tier is, you might think the tier monsters are the problem cards, but I've been playing against tier for a while, and I can say for certain, these cards are, like, kinda strong, but, like, not... It's not that bad, actually, if you just look at the monsters, right? But the issue is the spell trap cards, honestly. Like, Scream is actually a completely disgusting card, as well as Solik, and Perlarino is kind of disgusting, but, like, honestly, this is somehow not that disgusting in comparison to, like, Cryme. Cryme is actually really disgusting because Tyr didn't deserve this. Why does Tyr get like a Omni Negate counter trap so you can't respond to it? Well, that's just irritating, honestly. The fact that both Solik and Cryme are both searchable in the same turn. And if you don't search them, they were probably in your hand to begin with, like one or the other. And that's just really irritating. So, that stops cards like Evenly Matched from just demolishing their whole board. But we can settle for second place. Red Reboot beats Cryme. But not really. The issue with Red Reboot, though, is that, like, for example, if your opponent has both Solik and Cryme, you would have to bait out the Cryme first and then activate Red Reboot. And then, on top of that, now you have to somehow deal with their back row the next turn, unless you kill them on that turn, or you just beat them, basically. So, how would that even happen? Like, so, you have to somehow bait out a Cryme, so that's takes minimum one card from your hand, like maybe a Forbidden Droplet or something. But, like, depending on their board, right? If they have Solik, they might not even care that you activate Forbidden Droplet, so they won't respond with Cryme. Because they can Solik the Rukalos, special summon it back in a new chain, and then it's not negated by Forbidden Droplet, it special summons back, And it still has the negate special summon effect, which is really obnoxious. Like, the amount of Forbidden Droplet targets you have, not that good. Deck Ruler no more, for the same reason as the Salik stuff, not super good. So Cryme is honestly a crime, you know? It's a war crime. This card literally just makes everything feel not doable. And of course, if you destroy Salik with a card effect, right? Like, let's say you Duster Salik, your opponent will just draw a Haveness, which is in hand. So it's very hard for you to deal with that as well. So, like, generics like this will not be super useful, somehow. But I think Context C is, like, okay, except Rukalos can stop you from summoning Contact C, and Rukalos doesn't just negate, it's a negate destroy for some reason. So that doesn't quite get you all the way there either. So, I mean, what we're pretty much left with is just Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries calling Kalos. Yeah. There's no, like, super better way to deal with this, honestly. These tech options have, like, situations where they'll definitely shine, but they're not generic enough to, like, justify them. Which is a shame. I would have loved to play Contact C for one reason or another. So, let's see. Tearlaments Cryme also has... Well, it's not Cryme, actually. But, let's see. Meta Noise? No one plays Meta Noise, do they? I mean, someone might. Actually, it was... Was it Grief? No, it was Heartbeat, right? No, it wasn't. Which one was it? Ah, Grief. That's the one. So Grief isn't that super played, and it honestly, Grief kind of just sucks. So, in comparison to the rest of the tier cards, I guess. Like, I would kill to get a zombie card that does what Grief does. But anyways, if you Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, the only way that a tier player could get their Kikalos back is if they sent Grief to the graveyard somehow. Assuming they're playing it at all. So if you Winter Cherries Kikalos, that's probably the best you can do. That doesn't really get that much better than this. Yep. And of course, like, honestly, the tier cards, if you just, like, straight up banned every spell trap card they have, they would just become, like, an okay deck. Well, we don't live in that timeline. So every single game is either you're getting hit by Floodgates, or you're getting hit by Tearlaments, which is literally just such a garbage meta, man. And people are saying Tearlament Mirror is fun. Yeah, okay, but like, how many games of Tearlament Mirror are we playing here? I want to play Yu-Gi-Oh, not Tearlament, you know? So, just had to get that off my back real quick. So, let's see. Where were we? Oh, yeah. So, evenly matched, for example, completely defeats every single card. Almost. The card they'll likely have to retain is like a Rukalos if it's on the field. Because Rukalos is likely the only monster your opponent will be able to do anything with, or card, I guess. Because Cryme and Salik do require a tier monster on the field. That's what while you control means, yep. So, they'll have to banish these and they're just gone and dealt with until they set them again. I suppose, because they're actually somewhat searchable, which is irritating. Ugh. And then Scream. Scream does a lot too. Pretty irritating how, like, all of their cards have 3 different effects. This lowers your attack, and this activates on both turns, actually. So if you normal or special summon while or your opponent does, it doesn't matter who does it. So then your opponent just gets the mill 3. Pretty irritating. And they also limited Shifter to 2. Really hate this meta, and I actually also hate that they limited Gozen and Rivalry and such, like, preemptively here. Because Gozen is actually decent for certain things, I guess. It's not super the best, I guess. Depends on the situation, but I guess they don't super affect tier. Tikaboo does, though. So I guess Tikaboo being at 2 is not the worst. Just because of that. Not super easy to deal with. It's just amazing how there happens to be, like, no cards that super deal with Tearlaments well. Like, for example, like, if we looked at any other deck, they have something, you know, you can do to them. But with this, it's exactly like you hit them with the Dimension Shifter, or you don't really have anything huge to do against a Tearlament. It's actually crazy. And for some reason, they just have basically an in-archetype spell trap removal spell card that's searchable. For some reason. No clue why. But in theory, I guess, if you have a bunch of high-impact spell trap cards, that's probably the way to go, but you still won't be able to special or normal summon because of Rukelis, but as it stands right now, there's no way to super easily get rid of Rukelis with a spell trap. So I guess your best options will, of course, be like Kaijus or like a Lava Golem. So, this is probably the best removal that you can get. And this is probably before they can take a single action, so you can tribute like Rukelis and Sprite Elf. Those are probably like two of the best options, or like well, it feels bad to do, but I guess there's also Redoer and Rukelis, just so they can't activate Salik, and Cryme. But like the issue with Lava Golem is you have to be somehow playing a deck that doesn't require a normal summon or special summon. But one of the biggest throws I've seen tier players do is they just hella play Maxi. Maxi is honestly pretty trash, but I can explain exactly why. So, the issue with playing Maxi in Tearlament is actually that Maxi doesn't stop your opponent's turn, and the only interaction, they usually have like about 6 interactions total, aside from like maybe a Havness or something, but that's not important. They might be playing like an imperm or something goofy, and then like 3 Ash Blossom. They definitely play 3 Ash Blossom, right? But the thing about that is that that is their only interaction. So if you can set up like a win con that they can't do anything about, like for example, if we have Ito, for example, you can, for example, just Ito lock your opponent and they'll mostly not be able to play, because tier players also do not play Forbidden Droplet. The only outs they have to this are very strange. So they have either Perlarino or Diviner usually for this kind of lock, but like a Scythe lock should completely obliterate them, for example. So if you could just set up a Scythe lock, it doesn't matter how many cards your opponent has almost. You just need some form of removal to remove their monsters from the field, namely the Tearlament ones, and then they won't be able to activate Salik or anything, so Maxi kind of worthless. If they were to just solely stop you before you could get any interruptions and set up your win con and board, then that's better than Maxi straight up, but whatever. And also, a lot of people whine about like getting Maxied on during the second turn, but when a tier player does it, it gives you a win con because they're around like maybe 16 potentially like cards from being decked out if they activate like their melee, and then they like summon like Yugioh activates a leak, whatever. They mill a lot more cards, might hit a Keldo or something, mill more cards, whatever the case. Though there's a good chance that they'll be like, I don't know, like 7 special summons away from just like losing straight up. So Maxi going second is honestly a godsend if they activate it. But that's only if they activate it early. If they're actually a smart player, this doesn't quite apply in the same way. If they wait till later and then drop the Maxi, that is still pretty nasty. Not a whole lot you can do against that. So then, probably going first, definitely. I think the best thing you can set up against them is just the Scythe. Scythe, they don't have any easy way to deal with Scythe as it happens. But of course, you kind of have to win the coin flip, so yeah, that's kind of what the name of the game becomes. Win coin flip or lose, set up your floodgates, or they set up their board and you didn't draw the outs to their board. No real interaction. No meaningful interaction, is how I feel. But anyways, you and Scythe block your opponent. And if you can manage some form of Scythe block, that should automatically win you the game. This is a lingering floodgate after all. Even if they remove the Scythe, nothing changes. As long as Scythe effect has been activated, so that's good. Called by is probably their exact only out, so if you have a negate for like a called by, you're probably set. And then you can just win on the second turn. But assuming you have like some kind of board, right? Should not be a big deal. And then following Scythe lock, there are like other locks like the yugioh lock, for example. Ibli is also not entirely the worst. As long as you don't give them a means to crash, I see it being completely fine. I mean, Ibli is a little weird, and just Ibli is more of an inconvenience than a lock most of the time, unless you're playing like maybe Code Talkers so you can U-Link. Which is, I guess, a shame. Not much you can do about this though. Eh. But I suppose this gets the job done as well. If you could somehow give your opponent like an Acid Golem as well, this would be a decent win condition. This is actually surprisingly doable, but won't focus too hard on Acid Golem today. Of course, like, there's also like Dark Claw, potentially, but Dark Claw, of course, is only really good for going first. So that there's an issue with a lot of these cards where they're really like one-sided, and either they really want to go first or they really want to go second. Like Scythe lock will automatically win you the game if you can pull it off like going first, but going second, your Scythe related cards won't really be doing that much for you. Most of the time, I guess. If you're dumping it like with Shooting Riser, for example, and you can also like dump something else with Shooting Riser, maybe that'll pop off, whatever. But I suppose Lava Golem is not bad. Assuming you are going first, for example, and a tier player does start playing on your turn, if for some reason you have a combo that does not require a normal summon, and you're doing that, and then the tier player starts playing on your turn, maybe you can Lava Golem the Rukalos away. Like, that is not entirely the worst thing in the world, I suppose. Kaijus also serve a similar purpose, but if your opponent has like a melee that they can special summon via like the effect of Sprite Elf, or like maybe Redoer can use its effect to send some tier cards to the graveyard, and then they'll just trigger the special summoning of something. Maybe that's not enough. But in general, like, if we forget about the back row that's giga annoying, generally XYZs should have been like a really good option against them, but because Cryme exists, Zeus is honestly not like the best it could be, because normally how Zeus can break a board is you do battle with an XYZ monster and then you go ahead and make Zeus and maybe like some other XYZs in between, so you have multiple activation of Zeus's board wipe effect. But yeah, if your opponent has like Cryme, that's a counter trap, and Zeus can't respond to that. So like chain 1 Zeus, chain 2 Cryme, and then you cannot chain 3 Zeus because it is a counter trap. And that is giga annoying, for example. And you can also stop like rank up. So like for example, rank up Magic Numeron Force. This will not be able to be used to its full potential, which kind of sucks as well. So, not much you can do about that. Maybe Denko Sekka might be the play then. Denko Sekka might be more reasonable. I am not 100% sure. But this might be enough, potentially. This actually will deal with back row better than Red Reboot, but of course you're put under the conditions that you can't activate spell trap cards as well, and that limits what you can play with Denko Sekka. And Denko Sekka, the other issue with Denko Sekka is you have to hard open Denko Sekka. Denko Sekka isn't limited at least or anything, so that there's like 3 Denko Sekka, so I think the odds of opening a 3 of is actually not as high as you would think. I would have to check, but I think it was like something like 30% maybe, or around there, 30-40%. I don't think it's too far off of that, so even if you have like somewhat ideal conditions, you'll like, let's say just hypothetically Denko Sekka will auto win you the game. If you don't get Denko Sekka, you auto lose, then like more than half of the time you should be losing your games because of this. That like Dimension Shifter being at 2, this is definitely the case with any shifter deck that goes second. They will just, the odds of them opening shifter are just so weak that they're actually depressing. That's kind of why Exo Sister is not as good as you might think in like Master Duel, and they're very vulnerable to like a single hand trap. Like for example, they have to activate, let's say, shifter, and then they'll activate Martha, right? And then later you hit them with the Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and they can't called by it. The only option they have is exactly Cross-Out Designator, which is a one-of. Just for example, which is not the best at all. One might argue it is actually the worst. It actually sucks. So, graveyard decks as well are really suffering, like decks that somewhat use the graveyard or just use the graveyard in general. Really suffering in this meta, not much I can do with them. So if I go back row removal though, like just generic back row removal, like Duster feels awful to play because it my opponent's cards will trigger and plus them for more interactions anyway, so the Duster doesn't feel like it's done enough, or maybe it didn't really do much against my like Tearlaments opponent. So if I had like a good inherent summon, I don't know, like Pank, it wouldn't even feel that good. Like, let's assume I just special summon Pank, beat over something. Let's say we beat over, I don't know. If we beat over Sprite Elf, they can still Merly for Sprite Elf summon Merly before we can pop it or do battle with it. Soul Leak. If we pop Soul Leak, they just add Haveness. If we happen to pop Cryme, that's like probably the best case scenario, I guess. But there's a good chance that they just... Well, Cryme doesn't do that much, I guess, in this situation. But like, if they do mill a Cryme early though, They could totally unbanish the Kalos from Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, which sucks. Yeah, that's pain. No easy way to go about this. There's no, like, instant win that you can pull here against this deck. They'll probably have some form of interaction, because their interaction is literally in the hand, on the field, in the graveyard, in the back row, in the spot, like, they have a field spell as well, monster interactions, graveyard interactions, all located in different places, which makes it insanely difficult to play around. So, like, the best case scenario I can see is, like, if you drop, like, a Duster and they don't have, like, a Cryme, because surely that will happen, right? And then, I don't know, you, like, normal summon Quakey Meru, like, Doom or something. That it needs exact spelling. Alright, so Quakey Meru Doom, and then they'll, like, negate all of their, like, all of their tier cards, and probably all of their, like, negates. And then now, the next step is now I need to, all of a sudden, now I need to be able to have a, I don't know, like, some form of XYZ deck or something. And then I can XYZ all over my opponent. And I have to XYZ specifically, because XYZ in general is the well, this is the only one exact good thing about XYZ decks is they are the deck that relies on the great, well, not deck, they are the extra deck summoning mechanic that needs the graveyard the least. So some decks, some XYZ decks of course utilize the graveyard, but pure XYZ decks don't really utilize the graveyard as much. So even if they are hurt, for example, it is still playable. Some decks, it is not playable if they do not have the graveyard or access to the graveyard, and that really hurts them. But, like, for example, if I Zeus Ascended Sage, and then, I don't know, I summon another 4 as well. Whatever, these are inherent summons, which are also nice. So, if you go ahead and use some of those effects, you can probably accomplish something, you know? In case of Ascended Sage, I guess, like, you could probably pretty reasonably go into Ultimate Leo Utopia Ray, and then Ultimate Leo Utopia Ray, for example, though, can become untargeted by the effect of Tornado Bringer, making it very hard for a Tearlament player to deal with. And the effect to search is not negatable, which is pretty funny. But that's also awkward in the sense that, like, you would get permanently negated by Salik. So you would lose the negate effect on Ultimate Leo Utopia Ray, which is really annoying. I don't know why, but, like, generally it doesn't matter. But Salik does negate permanently. You know, as long as that monster remains on the field, its effects are negated. Oh boy. Well, isn't that painful? So, in terms of dealing with Tearlaments, there's not really a super good strategy for it. You just have all these mishmashes of cards that have interactions that, like, hinder them, but I think the best option is, like, a Lava Golem or Dimension Shifter if you can play it, but at the same time, like a card like Dimension Shifter and Lava Golem, they might be powerful, but the drawback is so insane that most decks can't play them. Like, it becomes really irritating. So, after, like, consideration, I think I don't like playing control decks, but, like, if you were to play a control deck, like, let's say Eldlik, whatever. Probably not Eldlik, because Eldlik does not do well against Shifter or play well with Shifter. But you don't typically need your normal summons in control decks. So you can play a Lava Golem, and then, like, just set some cards and pass. But your back row probably doesn't have enough interaction to deal with, like, whatever Tearlaments has to offer. There's a good chance that is the case, so... Like, just for example, like, with this mishmash of cards, I'll just show you guys. So, you can go like this, this, and then this is also good, so we will go this as well. Impermanence, just in general. This is also, like, typically good, but if we're playing, like, macro D-shifter, I guess not going for a cold buy is the smarter play, so we'll just have to play through, like, any Ash Blossoms or whatever. So, that sucks, but whatever. And all of these work under shifter as well, so that might be able to do something to our opponent. So, now at this point, with this, the issue is where is our win con? Well, I don't see a win con either, so keep working on it, I guess. What kind of deck can play all of this? And now you need a compact engine as well. And this deck, I'll be real, it doesn't look that fun to play. You're just literally setting cards. You're playing, you're just pressing yes, kinda. And then I guess while we're here, might as well. This is reasonable as well. Do need ways to out our opponent's board. Raigeki is actually not gonna. What is a good form of removal we can do? Yeah, I can't think of one as it happens. Eater of Millions. Maybe this? This is on Inherent Summon, isn't it? Yeah. So, I guess maybe you just slowly beat down with Eater of Millions. But there's also like a going first options, like maybe you can Diablosis your opponent, maybe you can hit them with the True King Lithosagum. That might be enough as well. True King Lithosagum being able to banish 3. This can banish every single key card that a Tearlaments player plays. A lot of their cards are actually going to be one-ofs, so this is probably pretty solid going first. Going second, it might have some play. I'm uncertain about this one. But yeah, this is essentially becoming a pretty pretty heavy well, stun deck, I guess. Floodgate deck, not the best. And at this stage, around this much, it should be able to shut down Tearlaments, and I don't think we have to invest any further. And we have like 13 cards to find a win condition, and that's like, can we even find one? Yeah, I don't really see an easy way to like get away to kill for me. But then at this point, it just becomes Numeron. Like, at some point, this just becomes Numeron, I guess. Numeron Network, this, and then we have the room for this stuff, like, to you. Actually, I didn't need this. And then that'll do, I guess. And then 3 of wall. Like, this doesn't fully work either, to an extent, because sphere mode, actually, you cannot attack sphere mode, so this is giga awkward as well, so it's not quite where you might want it to be, I guess. So if you Raigeki as well, the cards just come back, or they don't really care about it at all, so Raigeki's not necessarily enough. It doesn't do, like, literally nothing, but it simply doesn't do enough. You need, like, some non-destruction kind of removal. And not just non-destruction, it has to be a kind of removal that doesn't send to the graveyard, so that's really annoying. So something like a Boxia, like a Fish Shooter, but like this is only one card, so it's not nearly enough. So that's also hyper annoying. And usually a lot of these like super good going second versatile engines, I guess, like for example the adventure stuff is actually pretty good, but it's so limited for some reason, even though like right now it'd be fine to at least have 2 of Enchantress, you know? Or I guess you can maybe illegal knight your opponent. So I would say if it didn't get like Brucalis negating its special summon. So that's pretty annoying as well. So yeah, there's basically no like super good way. The best card you can possibly play against Tearlaments, I guess, going first is probably going to be like a Macrocosmos, because they don't really have good back row removal. That's about it though. Aside from that, like even if you do drop a shifter, like let's say for example you're playing Flu or Exorcister, I'm sorry guys, but let's be real. Exorcister and Flu kind of just suck ass. Your entire line, like even after you drop the shifter, if you get Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, if you get hit by Ash, then your entire line is dead. There's nothing you can do. And then they waited out the shifter, and then they can just continue playing as if nothing happened, and you can't shifter them anymore, so you either had to have like a macro in hand or a Dimensional Fissure. And that just becomes a really obnoxious game of like Floodgate, have the out, don't have the out. And I don't like that either. Another thing that sucks about all this tech is that like specifically with Contact C, there are decks that are completely unaffected and do not care about Contact C, and you're just blessing them with Contact C, and this is just like a dead card in your hand, and of course Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, same deal. Like, look at my extra deck here. If my opponent is not playing exactly Tearlaments, Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries is completely dead in my hand. Nothing I can do about that. So, now it looks like Neuron is actually just not efficient enough. Isn't that the crazy part? And of course, there's just nothing you can realistically do to your opponent sometimes with this. Tearlament being like the kind of deck that has stuff in the graveyard, the hand, and then stuff like back row, and then like monsters with interaction. It's honestly just like your best bet is probably to just find a way to resolve evenly matched, I guess. So I don't know, maybe something like a Lava Golem into evenly matched might destroy your opponent's board, I suppose. Like, nothing short of, like, one of these 6 cards and then one of these 3 cards would be able to completely decimate their board. And then the next condition that you follow after using this, of course, as mentioned before, is you would need an Inherent Summon only combo or Special Summon only combo. And then you can, I guess, go into something. They'll surely be able to, well, I don't know what you have, but you need something after that. And that's winnable from there, I guess? Maybe. But of course, because of all these Floodgate players running around, assuming you're going second, you either need back row removal or just some way to deal with that as well. And there's just no deck, I don't think, that has easy access to everything you need all the time, so it just feels like really unsatisfying to play, because, like, let's say I'm playing Of course, like a Harpy's Feather Duster. So, how do I spell this? Duster. Pain. Oh, Harpies. Like that. Sure. Whatever. So, I'm playing Harpy's Feather Duster, for example, and my opponent isn't playing, like, a macro-heavy deck like, I don't know, let's say, Labyrinth. Then, and I actually get matched against a tier player. That sucks, because I know that I will plus them if I, destroy their back row. But, like, on the flip side, like, let's say I'm against, a Labyrinth player, and I'm getting hard floodgated by, like, macro and stuff. Like, I have the Duster. Well, I don't have the Duster for them, because I can't run it, because I was running, like, evenly matched instead for a tier, or, like, a Lava Golem. And Lava Golem in hand doesn't really do anything against, like, Labyrinth. So, it's just suffering, straight up. So, yeah. At some point, it's just like, I can't wait for Kashtira. Maybe then, you know, we won't have to deal with at least the floodgates. Which is a start. Like, just getting hit by macro every turn. Now instead we get hit with a Rise Heart or and Shangri-La and Zone Locked. Actually, wait, that doesn't sound that much better. Huh. How strange. And if Diablosis gets hit by the ban list, I'll be upset. Diablosis is my boy. Well, there's no super good option for this, I suppose. But if I were to say something crazy, I guess it would be, if you could set up like a Diablosis, that would be fun. Like, perhaps multiple Diablosis. I don't know, there are cards that might be able to pull that off, even under Shifter, so very much Kashtira at home, I suppose. There are a lot of decks that will get just demolished by Diablosis the Mind Hacker. And I guess before we end this video, I'll just go ahead and show you guys exactly why Flu sucks. And Exo Sister as well. So, the primary best removal option you have in Floowandereeze is Floowandereeze and then Unexplored Winds. And of course, your going second is much worse than your going first. Your combo dies to one interaction, and you typically have no method of extending your play. You have Map, and that is it. And Map is limited 1. And then, even if you activate Floowandereeze and the Advent of Adventure, you still have only one Map. And one normal summon, basically. And then you might have this. And your best form of removal is Floowandereeze and the Unexplored Winds, and your whole engine is just straight up inefficient. And your end board is honestly not that good, having M-Pen and stuff. Without the barrier statue, your deck is just has no good win con, honestly. So even if you do like Map plus like Unexplored Wind and Dreaming Town, then your only option is to go into Apex Avian, and then you have like one negate, and your opponent, if they're not playing a deck that needs to rely on links, then they can probably remove M-Pen with like ease, right? And they only have to play through one negate, so you're really hoping you open like Macrocosmos or whatever. So you're basically not even playing Flu to an extent, because you're not utilizing the Flu cards, you're using the other cards, and you're just like hoping the Flu cards do something. Because, like, you know, Macro, for example, will always be doing something for you, so this isn't even good going first, in a sense, because if your opponent drops an Ash Blossom Joy Spring, it's just, you better have open, like, a Shifter and stuff. Like, if you didn't open that, you lose. They were your win condition anyways. And resolving the Flu stuff didn't really matter in the long run, I guess. So, then there's also, of course, Exo Sister. Exo Sister has all the same issues, where it's literally just pretty much praying you open Dimension Shifter. Anything else is just a bonus. Like, doesn't really matter. Exo Sister does have the one benefit of being like a little more consistent than like Flu, but like the going second power of Exo Sister is non-existent. Your game plan is literally, please, for the love of God, open Shifter. Otherwise, you just lose pretty much. Like, let's be real. Even if you open like an Ash Blossom, a Joe Spring, or an Imperm, a lot of decks can like tank one or two hand traps and just play through. And let's say they have like one interaction, you already lost. That's just it. Like one or two, and you're completely done. You have no like good way to board break. Like, even though Zeus is technically a card that you can play, good luck making Zeus. Exo Sister actually doesn't make Zeus that well. Like, compared to like some decks that are really good at making Zeus. Like, for example, the amount of material though that your Exo Sister cards have will always be like 2, so whenever you make a Zeus, it will always be 3 mat, so you'll never be getting a 4 mat Zeus. So you'll only get 1 activation on Zeus. So if they have a negate for the Zeus, like a monster negate, just making the Zeus didn't do enough. And of course, if your opponent has negate destroy, like let's say you make Michaelis, negate destroy Michaelis, you can't make Zeus. Or you make Michaelis, go attack, make Zeus, negate destroy Zeus. Pretty awful. And of course your hand, if you get like Ash Blossomed on Martha, yeah, you're really not doing much. And that's just kind of how it goes. In fact, Exo Sisters and Blue don't even have like the ability to, like, assuming they're going first, you can't even floodgate out tier. So like even like elemental hero, or not elemental heroes, but basically just heroes in general, are better at just floodgating your opponent. Oh, hero. Well, I guess I can't spell, but heroes in general are better at floodgating, like just a, for example, Dark Law, Destiny hero, Angel, or whatever. It's not. Is it? What is it? Wait, is it Destiny hero? Wait, did I spell this wrong? Oh. Destiny hero, Dark Angel, and then there's like, Destiny hero, Plasma, whatever. All these floodgates that you have access to, you just really need access to like a couple of these. Probably Angel doesn't matter as much, I guess, but something like that is good enough, and you have access to that. I think there are probably one-card combos that can either access Dark Law or Plasma, and then those are much closer to auto wins than whatever Flu or Exo Sister setup. The only good thing about them is exactly that they can play under Macrocosmos and Dimension Shifter. Aside from that, there's really nothing going on. And of course, Macrocosmos is a completely dead card going second, so it does nothing for you. Yeah. There's just no super good decks to deal with a billion different interactions. The only thing good about something like a Macrocosmos specifically is because people are playing Ishizu tier right now. If they were actually playing something aside from Ishizu tier, I don't know why, but I guess we should mention this before we end this video. So, for some reason, Sharon is activatable, but it's really weird. Because Sharon works just... I guess Sharon's probably bugged or something right now. Because Sharon doesn't make sense how it works to me right now. So, let's say Macro or Dimension Shifter is active. The last time I had a Sharon myself, as I was testing some stuff. So, Sharon, for some reason, yeah, like, it just makes no sense. So, the fact that you can special summon Sharon makes sense because Sharon doesn't do anything for cost, but I'll read the effect and you can just guess how this resolves, right? During your main phase, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, send one monster from your hand to the graveyard, then send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. Okay, so you send one monster from your hand to the graveyard. Okay, that's the effect. Then send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. It, even though this effect is technically not resolvable and part of the effect, so it's really weird. Or just really dumb, I don't know which is the case, but you can summon Sheeran under macro, and then that's perfectly legal, of course. And then you send one monster from your hand to the graveyard, which is impossible, but this is by effect. So you send a monster from your hand to the graveyard, except you can't. It gets banished. So then you don't send 3 cards from your deck to the graveyard. I guess it kind of makes sense, but it's like dumb. Hate this. But because of this, for example, it might seem not super good, but then you realize any 2/4s, for example, just makes Utopia double. Just for example, so then let's assume a tier player is just playing Utopia double for a second. Just humor me. So Utopia double, add double or nothing, make Utopia, and then just attack for game, literally. That wouldn't work against Flu, I guess, because of M-Pen, I guess, but like against a different deck, that's actually feasible enough. It's just dumb. So that's doable. Or something along those lines. I guess if they were playing it, they actually have an option that works to break this. I believe it was this. There was a monster, an XYZ monster that looked something like this. What was the name of it? I forget. Rank 4. Let us check. I believe it is either a UR or SR as well. So this will limit it. I don't think I have it, right? It looks kind of like a Twin Twisters, right? Tornado Dragon. You can activate Tornado Dragon to out Macrocosmos this way if you really wanted to. In fact, yeah, actually they can definitely do this. This isn't even that hard to make if they're playing a Shizu tier, actually. All they need to do is have Sharon in hand. Wow, that's obnoxious. So yeah. Just... this meta is pain. I have no other ways of putting it. I guess I could keep going, but the video's already gone on for way too long, so I'll stop it here. And yeah, if you guys have any insights that you want to maybe mention, I guess, relating to like tier, then go ahead and let me know in the comments below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.